Welcome back, everybody, to the philosophy of mind. Now, one of the things that we are going to do in this lesson is talk about one of the most important introductory concepts as it relates to the idea of the philosophy of mind. And this is the distinction that we're going to make between types and tokens in our identification of mental states and brain states. So, this is something that I want you to take good care to understand, because it's going to be very important when we go through and start looking at the various different philosophy of mind theories, when we start looking, for example, at functionalism, and when we look at mental causation and behaviorism and identity theory and dualism, all of which are going to involve examining the distinction between types and tokens when it comes to the distinction between mental and brain states. So this is one of the introductory issues which relates to the philosophy of mind, and so as a result of which we're going to dedicate an entire lesson to exploring what we mean between the difference between a type of a thing and a token of a thing. Okay? So let's just do that. Let's just start to unpack the distinction between types and tokens as it relates to the philosophy of mind. Now, in the philosophy of mind, we will make this distinction for our crucial understanding about the relationship between the idea of a mental state and their relationship to physical states. Now, these can also be described as brain states. So, we will make a distinction often when we look at mainly things like physicalist theories of mind. We will make a distinction between the idea of a mental state, an experience of a particular sensation, and the actual brain state that coincides with, and the way in which one may be reducible down to the other, maybe the relationship and the ways that these two things differentiate and interact. Maybe they're the same thing if you're somebody who accepts an identity theory of mind. But fundamentally then, the distinction between types and tokens is crucial for this idea. They help really to clarify debates in physicalism. And so I'm just giving you this example in this lesson so that when we come back to looking at types and tokens in a future lesson's time, you will have a good understanding of what we're referring to. So particularly, for example, things like the debates that surround identity theory and functionalism are very, very important, because they rely on this distinction between types and tokens. So what is the distinction between types and tokens? Generally, these are the ways in which we categorize and identify entities. So a type is a general category or a general description of a kind of thing. It represents, therefore, a class of objects or a class of events which share a commonality among properties. So, for example, the word cat is a type in this kind of characterization, because the word cat refers to a general concept. It refers to a type of all cats. I can essentially get a big old list of cats that I can see. There's a lot of cats on the estate that I live on, and they all are cats. They might be different in terms of their names, their actual names. One of them's called Albert, for example, or their various different their various different characteristics in terms of one might be a ginger cat, one might be a grey cat, but they're all cats. They all share that category. So the word cat refers to a type. A token, on the other hand, is a specific instance or a specific occurrence of a type. So, for example, each individual cat is a specific cat. So, for example, a cat that's called Whiskers, or the cat that I named just then called Albert, is part of a type, but is also a specific token of that type, token of the type cat. Let's take a look at an example, and this is a really good way of illustrating the example. The type versus token distinction can be seen with this image. If I were to ask you here how many pieces of fruit there are on this screen, what would you say? Well, The correct individuals in the room would say that there are multiple ways of answering that question. Because on the one hand, you have two answers. Because firstly, you could say that there is one piece of fruit, okay, on this screen, i.e. the fruit apple, okay? There is one apple. There's one type of fruit here. The fruit is apples, because they're just an image of apples. However, you might also say that there are 6 pieces of fruit, because you might refer to each individual apple that is on the screen. This here is a distinction, therefore, between a type and a token. The first answer, in which you would say there is one piece of fruit there, that is referring to the type. There is one type of fruit. There is an apple, okay? There are apples here, okay? There's not apples and oranges. There's not apples and bananas. There's just apples. The second answer is referring to the tokens. It is referring to the variety, each individual specific characterized piece of fruit, which would therefore mean that there are 6 pieces of fruit on the screen, each individual apple. This is the distinction between the types and tokens. The type-token distinction, okay, is used to address the relationship between the mental states, so things like thoughts, things like sensations, things like emotions, and the physical states, so the actual brain process that is essentially actualizing that mental state. So, for example, we could come to a conclusion about the sensation pain, that there are 2 different ways of describing that sensation. You could talk about the mental type of pain, which is just this idea of pain in a general form, but you could also talk about the specific mental token pain, i.e. the specific pain that you experienced when you stubbed your toe earlier today, okay? That is a specific sensation of pain at that specific moment in time, and so that is a specific token, whereas it is a generalization to talk about the type of sensation being the type of pain that you are experiencing. So as a general conclusion then, a type-token distinction is a fundamental aspect of the philosophy of mind. You might not think it is at the moment because we've only explained what they are, what the distinction is in this lesson. We haven't gone into any great detail about how it applies to the philosophy of mind, but trust me, we will over the next few lessons, so don't worry about that. But it also is very helpful for our understanding and for the resolution of debates around the nature of mental states and their physical states.